USDA is projecting U.S. cattle prices next year will drop 8% from 2015. The agency's expectation, released this week, is based on abundant beef in cold storage, poor foreign demand, and larger supplies of big cattle. The upcoming cattle inventory report will be released in a little over a month at the end of January. July's numbers showed a 2% rise in cattle and calves, the first increase for July since 2006. We recently talked with Nebraska Extension educator Berger about the tight margins cow-calf producers may face in 2016 and how useful it can be to determine costs of production.
So we know our cost of production as we think about a cow-calf operation. It really gives us some power for making management decisions and also marketing. That really helps us as we know where we're at in relation to where things are at. Helps us think about our input costs, where we can make some management changes to drive that operation where we want to go.
So how can you determine your cost of production?
Well, obviously first you got to have some good production records and financial records in place, and then we meld those together, and based on that we can get a handle on what our unit cost of production is per pound of calf weaned per cow exposed.
Once you do determine your own cost of production on your operation, how can you use those numbers, implement them on your place to maybe make a plan for 2016?
Yeah, so we know our cost for production. We're going to be looking at what our inputs are, thinking about what are we getting in return for the dollar we spend. You know, when calves are bringing $3 a pound, we might think about our inputs a little differently than they are if we're getting $2 a pound. And so we need to scrutinize our inputs, put together some projections in terms of what do we think our cost of production is going to be on these calves for 2016, and then make some management decisions accordingly to try to drive things to where we can make a profit under current conditions.
What did the estimates show for estimated annual cow costs in Nebraska for 2015?
Yeah, so if you go to the beef.unl.edu website, put together a one-page sheet there, you'll be able to find that talks about kind of an estimated cost of production for central Nebraska based on current market values for inputs. The sobering thing to me really is if we include all costs, if we include cow depreciation, some interest, depreciation on equipment, include labor, replacement cost, we're somewhere around $1,000 in terms of cow costs. Now when we actually get to calf costs, not every cow weans a calf obviously, so we're honestly somewhere around $1,100 on annual cow costs that translated to calf produced, so we're around $1,100 for a weaned calf at this point if we include all those costs based on what I've got there. Obviously people's numbers are different, but that's kind of a ballpark number.
Are there any costs in there that really stood out to you, Aaron, specifically?
You know, a big one for us is feed cost, and that's obviously a big driver most of the time. Often around 60% of annual cow cost is feed cost. And in Nebraska, we've seen pasture rental rates really increase significantly over the last 5 years. The other thing that's really interesting, Jim Robb with the Livestock Market Information Center has got a good slide that shows annual cow cost for the United States as a whole. And what's interesting to me, go back to 2004, somewhere around $400 was the estimated annual cow cost, including pasture rent. Now we're somewhere close to $800, and so over the last 12 years, basically doubled annual cow cost. The thing that's really concerning to me a little bit, if we go back to 1985, over that 20-year period, we only increased cow cost about $100 over that 20 years. Over the last 12 years, we've increased it about $400. So this cost side of the deal has really become an issue for us, I think, in the cow-calf production business.
So you mentioned how costs had increased, but how has profitability changed for the cow-calf producer over the last few years?
So we really see some really wide ranges over the last several years. Obviously go back to 12 and the drought was challenging for many producers. Recovery from that in 13. 14 is probably going to go down historically as one of the best years ever for cow-calf producers in terms of the value that they got from their calves. You know, I was looking yesterday, many calves sold in the fall were approaching $3 per pound on a steer calf for a 500-pound calf, and you know now we're down around somewhere close to $2 a pound, and we're looking at $500 to $600 less gross revenue in 2015, depending on when you sold your calves per head, than we did in 2014. So with the cost I see right now, if you're putting in market value for inputs, we're in a place where we're close to break even, and as things trend down, it's going to require some challenge from a management standpoint to make a profit.
On the Market Journal website, you can find more resources on determining costs of production, including the estimated annual cow cost for central Nebraska in 2015.